Um, from the groups, I think I answered the questions, but after that, did you have any questions left over individually? Or you're all okay?
I've got one quick one.
Yeah.
About karma. Because I'm thinking of taking my kids on this pilgrimage,
Yeah.
dangerous pilgrimage to Lapchi, which apparently is life-threatening.
Yeah. It's one way to get rid of them.
Yeah. I was actually thinking, well,
I might stay at home and just show them the slides.
I was thinking if it's their karma,
To die.
as a parent, if it's their karma to die, then it's their karma to die. And if it's not their karma to die, surely they can't die.
No. But do you know
Do I know?
what their karma is?
No, no.
Right.
But if it's their karma, it's their karma, and if it's not, it's not. But then someone else suggested, well, there's situational karma. So if I'm actually putting them in a dangerous, how dangerous it is, who knows, because we haven't got there yet. But, if I'm putting them in a dangerous situation, then actually, potentially, I'm causing the conditions for that karma to ripen. Whereas if I didn't even put them in a dangerous situation in the first place.
Right.
But is that correct, or is that not?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're providing the condition in which they could die. You don't have the motivation for them to die, right? You have the motivation, you want them to experience something, something good. But you are providing them with a situation that is dangerous. I mean, those planes, if you're flying up into the mountains, they're dangerous, there's landslides, etc. But then here also, you could be sitting in Wellington and the ground's going like this. Same. So if they have that karma to die in certain situations, it'll happen. But I think you just take precautions. You're as careful as you can be because you love your children, you want to protect them. But on the other hand, if you protect too much, you take away all these good opportunities for them. You don't want them to leave home. You don't want them to go anywhere. That's one extreme. And the other extreme is you don't care at all. Some middle way, you research, you do it as safely as possible. And then you also have to trust to the Buddhas. When we were going to Tibet with Lama Zopa, he said, "Oh, there's big obstacles. You're going to have to recite. I can't remember how many million. We had to recite a huge amount of mantras, something like 100 million mantras, before we could go as a group. There were about 75 of us or something, so it wasn't so bad to recite Maritzi mantras for protection. So maybe also what you have to do is check with lamas. A good lama who can check divinations. You check if there's any obstacles before you go, and then you do pujas, you do prayers, and then you remove the obstacles. Yeah? Don't just think, oh, well, it'll be fine. Can't say like that. When we went with Lama Zopa, I had to stay in Lhasa, and he went off. They experienced, really, really difficult times, to the point where there'd been landslides. They were on a tiny ledge like this, walking like this. Tupten Pema, Tupten Pema, the New York nun, with her big bags, walking on this tiny ledge, saying to Rinpoche, "I can't do it, I can't do it." And he's saying, "Jump across." They had to jump from one side to the other. And Rinpoche jumped across. And then he stood there and said to people, "Come on, you can do it, jump." And they said if he hadn't been there, there's no way they could have jumped across a ravine. It wasn't so wide, but they had to jump from one tiny ledge to another. Then there were landslides, people passing out on the bus because they were on 17,000 feet. Zenla just collapsed. She'd go, oh, like this. Rinpoche slapping, "Come on, wake up." All these sort of things were happening. So they were the obstacles that were arising, but nobody died, nothing happened, because we did all the prayers before we went. I think before you do anything like that, good to check whether there's any obstacles and what prayers to do, protective prayers. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Is a hard. Yes. 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 In the end, Buddha said, check everything as if you're buying gold. So Lama Zopa says, or Lama Yeshe, here is like a laboratory. This is where you check, in this laboratory. But what I often say is, okay, we're supposed to check as if it's gold. Do you know how to check gold? I want 22 karat gold. How do I check? I don't know. So what do? YouTube, Google. These days we put all our faith in YouTube, Google, right? How to check gold. 1 million answers come up. How do I know which answer is the correct answer? Is right? I don't know. So I agree with the checking. And the checking should lead you to faith, counteracting doubt. Doubt is a delusion, which is a two-pointed needle where you're trying to sew, but you're going between 2 points of the needle. So you can't sew because you're going between virtually yes, no, yes, no. So yes, we do need doubt in a way for the checking mechanism. But once you've checked, then you need to have faith. I think what happens with a lot of Westerners is they have doubt, they check, they don't develop faith, and then they go back to doubt again. And that continues on. Doubting, doubting, doubting. Because in major religions in the world, we've seen problems. Within Buddhism, now we've seen problems. And perhaps it's made us more realistic. Instead of seeing it as a perfect philosophy, you see that they're imperfect people within a perfect philosophy. So in the end, what you can have faith in is your inner guru, the inner purity. You can have faith in that. That peace of mind, that wisdom of mind, that compassion of mind, that is all the potential within there. So your inner guru is what you're developing and growing. If you can develop faith in that, that's always with you. And that can develop and grow. When you have faith in the Buddha, I often like to talk about the prayers because we recite prayers and we recite refuge. You know, what's refuge? I take refuge in coffee. I take refuge in chocolate. I take refuge in red wine. Whatever it is, isn't it? We take refuge in it. But these refuges are temporary. Then they don't have the ability to really protect you. So when you check Buddha and the qualities of Buddha, they're amazing qualities. But of course, you can't see those qualities. You don't know about those qualities. You've never met Buddha that you know of. So then you've got to take somebody else's word, scriptural authority, that this is all true, and the teacher, that they're not lying to you, manipulating you, using you, but for what? You have to check that. What would they be lying and cheating for? And then over 2,600 years, we haven't found any lies or deception from Buddha's side. Nobody's found it, because I'm sure we'd hear about it in this day and age on Facebook and all the social media. So the teachings, I think, are perfect. The people who are trying to practice the teachings are imperfect. And so they make mistakes, whether it's cheating, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, whatever it is. Some people within the philosophy are going to make mistakes. Then should we blame the philosophy, or should we put blame on the disturbing emotions? So Buddha would say the disturbing emotions, because we all have disturbing emotions. You know, when we have strong desire, I want, and I can't see anything other than the desire object. So in that time, you can't check. In that time, you can only see the desire object. And if somebody says to you, but is that a real desire object? Is it a good desire object? Do you really want that object? You say, well, of course I want that object. You know, that's all I can see. It's tunnel vision. But in the times when the mind is peaceful and calm, and you're checking the methods, when you check the methods, do they work? So you can only check some things. You can't check everything. So Buddha said, some things you can check through inference. For instance, the smoke coming from a chimney. There's probably a fire underneath because I can see smoke. So I can make an inference about that. But some things cannot understand, like emptiness. Emptiness, you have to take on faith that everything else the Buddha taught is true. So why would he be lying about emptiness? Why would he be wrong about emptiness? Because this is the ultimate teaching to get you out of samsara. And what His Holiness has used, you know, the other great teachers, what they've done, what they've realized is emptiness along with compassion, bodhicitta. So we can see the proof. In English you say proof of the pudding, isn't it? The proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we look at the pudding and we think, is it worth eating? Before we get into Buddhism, you look at the whole system. You know, well, is it worth it? You know, should I? And I think we have that feeling of doubt because it's a big system to get into. And once you start getting into it, you feel that if you want to involve yourself in it, it's going to take time, it's going to take energy. And what's the result going to be? So if you're looking for the result of enlightenment, maybe it's too much. But if you're looking for less disturbing emotions, better response to your world, better state of mind, good sangha, if you're looking for those things, I think that's a good beginning. Then if you're looking for how to benefit others, the Bodhisattva path. I've made the decision, I'm going to benefit others. And that's not just for this life, it's for future lives until enlightenment. And then enlightenment, I'm so totally inspired by Buddha and his deeds, or Tara and her deeds. I'm so inspired, I want to be like that. But I think it comes down to when you receive teachings, whether you're inspired or not to go on. I think it comes down to that. Because when I first came into Buddhism, I heard Geshe Lama Kunchog, Lama Lundrup, these really incredible Tibetan teachers who came out of Tibet with nothing, went through terrible deprivation in the south of India, burning down forests to make the monastery. I mean, they went through hell in order to make the monasteries. And Geshe Lama Kunchog lived in a cave for 9 years. Nobody knew he was in that cave. He didn't eat for 9 years. He just took the essence of the wind, the energy of the wind, in Sum, which is at 17,000 feet, living in Milarepa's cave, up a steep cliff. Lama Zopa said he could hardly even climb up there. He didn't even know how Geshe Lama Kunchog lived up there. And just below was a village. He never went down to the village to get food or drink. He just lived in that cave all year round for 9 years. If you read the book about the practices he did, you can't understand. Hundreds of thousands prostrations, hundreds of thousands water bowls. And yet when I met him, he didn't say, look at me, You know, great practitioner. I was in the cave for years, didn't eat anything. Just seemed like a really simple person with a cheap Zen. This one, cheap, sometimes holes in the robes. Didn't look like anything special at all. And yet, when he taught, you realized he was completely special because he had all the Gelugpa lineages, all the Kagyu lineages. And yet, how did he have all these lineages? Because he came out of Tibet and he was in that cave, and you couldn't put it together. How did he do all of this? So then you develop incredible faith that these methods work, but you've got to put these methods into practice. You can't sit on the outside throwing stones at the glass or whatever, standing way back and throwing stones and saying, it doesn't work. You've got to get involved. And involving yourself means renunciation. I let go of this ego, of this happiness for this life, because I see that future lives are more. You're at that time of life where you're thinking there's not a lot left, right? 20 years, 30 years, but you're not thinking 100 years more. So you think, as we get older, we think, well, maybe I've got 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. What do I want to achieve with that? That's the shorter amount when you compare it to future lives, which is so much more. So then, why aren't I putting more effort into the future lives? Why am I putting so much effort into this life and getting to the coffee shop, buying the coffee, the meal? I'm putting all that effort and energy into that, which is temporary pleasure, but I'm not putting it into future lives where there's much more time potential, compassion potential, wisdom potential, because future lives are more than this life. This life, 10, 20, 30 years. Future lives, thousands of years, millions of years, who knows? So I think start with doubt, because that's the scientist's way, right? Observation, that's the scientist's way. You observe the emotions. And by observing the emotions, you start to understand these are disturbing. What's it disturbing? The actual nature of the mind. If I leave my mind alone, it's like water. It settles. That's its nature, right? This is what Buddha said. So the nature of the mind is peaceful. I disturb it with these emotions, so I churn it up. But if I understand I'm churning it up and I choose just to breathe it out, the churning stops, the peace returns. But say my mind isn't under control and I continue churning, then what? I need something more than just the breathing, because that's not enough for me. I'm busy in my mind and I'm thinking, breathing, this is ridiculous. I'm really disturbed, I'm really bothered about this, and breathe it out. And I'm really disturbed, I'm really bothered, breathe it out. And stupid idea, breathe it out. And the mind gets involved with it, and I'm fighting back and all that. This is when you really need the analytical meditations. And then you experiment with that. Experimenting here. What's it doing in here? Is it putting oil on the water to calm it down? And when you discover that works, you think, aha, this is clever. Because without that, I'd be stuck with the churning mind, breathe it out, this is crazy, I can't breathe it out. So that contradiction, you're telling yourself, be peaceful, but I can't be peaceful. You see, I have Tibetan friends, and whenever anybody gets sick, all they say is, stay calm, be peaceful. And for a Westerner, this is highly irritating. That when a Westerner's got stuff going on, if you say, oh, just be peaceful, be calm, stop thinking about it, it can completely drive you crazy, saying something like this. We are thinking people, right? This is the way we are in our society. So, Buddha said for people like that, strong intellect, you need these other types of meditations. Not just the mindfulness, but the other type that then counteracts the disturbing thoughts. So you experiment with that within your mind, you discover it works, and then you think, aha, this guy was pretty incredible, Buddha. Because he made this system, and this system for all different types of minds. Just by walking from village to village. You have this problem, this is what you do. You have this problem, this is what you do. And it came together as three systems, Theravada, Mahayana, Tantrayana. He manifested as Vajradhara, giving tantric teachings. But also three baskets, teaching about the environment, teaching about being monks and nuns, all different sorts of teachings in 40 years. What have we achieved in 40 years? No? When you think what he did in 40 years, without the internet, without a car, driving at 100 kilometers an hour to the next village, just walking from place to place, and the disciples memorizing the teachings, putting it together, collating it. Really amazing what he achieved in those 40 years. And then the way he was born, the way he lived, and the way he died was all a lesson for us. Right? How to live. Well, he lived a very rich existence, same as us. Without the remote controls, but pretty much remote control. Give me that. Give me that. You know, he had servants. So he lived a very rich existence. And then his father wanted him to be the king. But he kept having this idea, I want to be in philosophy. I don't want to be a king. But the father was pushing all the time, be a king, rule the kingdom. So he said, in the end, look, if I'm going to rule the kingdom, I need to get out and have a look around. I need to see who I'm ruling. So the father got really upset, really worried. If he goes out, he's going to see things that disturb him. So he shouldn't see this. So we'll sanitize the village. He won't see any problem. And that way he'll want to rule this kingdom. So the father sent out sanitizers, hide everything negative. He should only see good things. But due to karma, he went out. He saw the birth of a child. He saw just a newborn child. And he said to his driver, what's that? Newborn child. Was I newborn child? Yeah, you were born also. Really? How fascinating. Imagine you're brought up like that in that cocoon of you don't know where babies come from. Nowadays, the children in different countries don't know where milk comes from. They think it comes from a carton. Same thing, we have ignorance. So he was ignorant. Then he saw an elderly person with a bent back with a stick. What's that? Aging. Really? Will I age? Oh yeah, you'll age. He saw a dead body. Will that happen to me? Yes. He saw somebody sick. So he saw birth, aging, sickness, and death. These became part of his system, the four sufferings that we all experience as human beings. Birth, we can't remember the suffering, but if we could, we'd remember terrible suffering. We were in this warm, liquid environment, and then Lama Zopa, I remember him describing it, and you think he can remember the whole thing. It's like two mountains and you're being pushed out of the two rocks. Your head's being squeezed, and then you're being pushed out. And you think, oof. Of course, the alternative now is cut and whip you out. They just take you out. So 1 minute you're in, the next minute you're out. Hanging upside down. Welcome to the world. Smack. But they say they don't smack them anymore, they use a vacuum cleaner. Welcome to the world. I'm exaggerating, but it's sort of 1 minute you're in this safe environment, the next minute you're out. When Lama Zopa talked about that, I thought, gosh, he really seems to know this. And it's this memory, because you have single point of concentration. You don't lose the memory from the previous life. You can remember into the womb, into the next life. And then, so we're born. From the minute of conception, you're aging. So that's a suffering. We're aging. From the minute of conception, we're getting older. But we don't think of that. We think 60 older, 70 older. But from the minute of conception, we're aging. And then inevitably, because of the elements of the body, when the elements are imbalanced, sickness comes. So we have that situation. And then at the end of our lives, death. And then what? Have we prepared for death? If we prepared, death is an opportunity. If we haven't prepared, death is a nightmare. Because all the things that you didn't forgive, all the things that you didn't deal with, come up at the time of death and come up as objects of aversion, hatred, things that you should have dealt with. So all a Buddhist practice is for death. The whole thing is about the time I die and whether I take advantage from that death. And if you can take advantage from it, it's called tukdam. You can sit in meditation and then you can realize emptiness. You can become a Buddha in that meditation. When you're not breathing, your heart stops. Physiologically, you're dead, but you stay within the body. So His Holiness's teacher, Ling Rinpoche, stayed in the body 13 days in 38, 40 degree heat in Dharamsala. 13 days. And in those days, everybody was known in Dharamsala. Ling Rinpoche was very well known by the police. So the police said, "Where's Ling Rinpoche?" The Tibetan said, "Oh, he died." "But what have you done with the body?" "Oh, he's still meditating." So the chief of police said, "These simple Tibetans, stupid people." So he went up with all his armed guards, with the guns, went up to where Ling Rinpoche was still sitting in meditation, arrived, and he said, "Where's Ling Rinpoche?" And they said, "Inside, meditating." So he said, "I thought he's dead." "Yes, he's dead, but he's meditating." He goes in and he says, "I'll go in by myself." And he went in, there's no incense, there's nothing in the room, no flowers, no incense. But he said he smelt the most beautiful smell in the room. And he heard like celestial angels singing. And after about 20 minutes, half an hour, he came out and he said, "I don't know what's going on in there, but leave it alone." Because you've come down to the essence, just the mind, without any input from the senses. You don't hear anything, you don't see anything, you don't feel anything. There's nothing going on from the senses, but the mind is still in there. And so in that time, you can realize emptiness, you can realize enlightenment. So Geshe Lama Kunchog, I think 6 days, his foot was going black, he was getting gangrene when the body had physiologically stopped. So the lamas had to do puja to ask the body, sort of leave the body now, go on. The minute they started puja, the consciousness left. Lama Oso, Lama Yeshe. I think Lama Yeshe was in Mount Sinai. They said, "We can only leave the body 1 day. And then we have to do something with the body." So they gave them a special side room and parked the body in the side room. Who knows what's going on? It's sort of Americans in those days, who knows what's going on? But they were so convinced that these lamas were something special, they allowed them, because actually it was breaking the law. You're not allowed to do this. So they gave them a special side room. So later in Vajrapani Institute, maybe 1990 something, I was talking to a doctor, and he had been Lama Yeshe's doctor, and he became Buddhist. He was a Jewish doctor who became Buddhist because he said Lama Yeshe was so incredible, I had to become Buddhist. He said, I just had complete faith because Lama's heart was enlarged. And so this doctor had told Lama Yeshe, you can't travel anymore and you'll be dead within a month. You have to stop. You'll be dead in a very short time. And Lama Yeshe said, oh, yeah, but I'm going to live 1 more year. No, you won't live 1 more year. 1 month, unless you have this operation, 1 month. And Lama Yeshe said, no, 1 year. So then he told all his students around the world, you had to do practices to keep harmony and do practices. And then he continued to teach all around the world 1 year, and then he passed away. Complete control over the body. So I met many people who met Lama in that time. One lady from Holland, she said she was in an airport and she looked across the airport and she saw Lama on crutches, looking broken. And Lama was always very powerful. So she looked across and she saw him on crutches with 2 nurses standing like this. And she sort of went, oh, it's Lama. And then he saw her and he threw the crutches away, did a little dance in the airport to show her, I'm okay, back on the crutches. So when Lama Osel met that lady, he was 2 years of age, he did the same little dance. Every time he met the person he knew in the previous life, if he'd done something particular in the previous life, he would do it again in this life to show, this is me, this is the continuity. Not the same person, but it's the continuity. So we can do this. We're educated people, but we have to get past our education. This is the problem. We're very clever. We have to get past the cleverness. And we have to somehow become simple. And in that simplicity, we realize everything. Lama Lundrup, the abbot of Kopan, was an amazing being. So simple, and yet knew everything that was going on. With the monks, the Westerners, knew everything. And yet, he was very small. And so when I was teaching in Kopan, I was teaching often Medicine Buddha, Reiki, and he encouraged me to teach Reiki in Kopan. He said, many people need Reiki. So he'd go up to people and he'd say, you, Reiki. And they'd say, me? He said, yes, you, Reiki. Course coming. Friday starting, you. And then they'd come to me and they'd say, I met this very strange little monk. They thought he was a child because he was so small. They said, met this very strange little monk who came up to me and said, you, Reiki. I said, oh yeah, Lama Lundrup. But not everybody, just certain people. He saw that their energy needed something. But when he taught, I used to ask him to come at the end of a course. I saw him in every course, the end of every course I taught. He'd sit down and he'd been completely different with every group. Completely different. One group he sat down and he was very serious and he said, okay, questions. And it was very wrathful, questions. There were about 40 people. And they all just sat there looking at him and he said, okay, starting, you. And he went along the line. And every single person had a question, but they wouldn't ask. But you, like that. Another time, he'd sit down and he'd just laugh and laugh and laugh. And then people were looking at him like, what is this? Just laughing and laughing. And then he'd talk for a little bit. And then Annie Jan would come and always want to record, to have recordings of it. So at some point, he'd pick up the recorder. And I think, uh-oh, here we go. And he'd play around with it and he'd put it down and later you'd discover he'd switched it off or he'd deleted it. So most of the time we didn't get any recordings, even though she was desperate for recordings. But he would just answer everybody's questions and just leave everybody in such a positive state of mind. So when you met lamas like this, you just had complete faith that if this is what it produces, this is what I want. I want a better state of mind. And yeah, they're not perfect. Of course, they have their ups and downs and all the rest of it. But they're using the methods in order to produce what they have inside, in order to actualize what's inside, which is that primordial state of mind, that primordial awareness, that wisdom that's in there, to recognize that and attain that. Paul, you want to say something? Okay. You don't have one little story?
Not really. It wasn't that close.
Weren't you?
Well, I met him in London, maybe in 19. He was in Kensington Town Hall having a
Yes.
talking.
Yes.
That's when I first met him. I had some friends that went to Copenhagen. And I was interested in something then. And they came back and so I went along to see him. And that kind of really picked up my interest. So that's the first time I saw him. And then the next time, I eventually went up to the Namgyel Institute.
Mm.
Again, his friends had started, early on, they started the institute there. A particular friend that wanted me to come up and do I used to work in a bank and did it for them, one assistant treasurer. And then these two guys come up, and Tibetan, one was open.
Yeah.
And of course, there was the first course for about 3 weeks. I hadn't actually moved up there then. I remember I was still working in London and went up for a 3-week course.
Yeah.
And just being with them, I mean, I decided then after a couple of weeks, I mean,
This is it.
This is what I've got to do.
Yeah.
But no particular instances with Lama himself, except a disappointing one when just before he passed away, and to see him, that was his main nutrition problems. And so yeah, a difficult time. But yeah, just to be around him, and there were lots of friends that had lots of really amazing experiences with him.
Yes.
And Susanna Parodi, I don't know, lots of people that had big problems, and he would help them personally.
Yeah.
And of course, he had English, which was quite amazing. His
Hippie English.
Hippie English,
Yeah.
which everyone grew to love. And then it was like Lama Zopa was the complete opposite.
Yeah.
He was like at that time just a saint.
So serious. Yeah.
He would sit there and meditate and cough a lot. And so yes, you really had to have that kind of connection, I guess, to get through that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a joyful time to be around. A lot of those people still.
Andy Wistrict and yeah.
He was more in London. But
Yeah.
You were in London.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's the next time I saw. After he passed away, I was working with Wisdom Publication.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't it Nick who was teaching Lama to drive? I think it might have been Nick.
Yeah.
And Lama's driving faster and faster and faster, and Nick's completely freaking out, and Lama's sort of closing his eyes and saying, "Look, you don't need to look," and sort of going around all these bends, and I think Nick Rebush had a lot of really amazing experiences with Lama. Yeah. I was talking to Adele once because she was collecting stories, for the book. And so I was telling her all these stories I knew, and there were 1 or 2 stories she didn't know, but most of them she knew. So I think this book that's coming out, Big Love, about Lama's life, is going to be a really incredible book. But there's one story Nick was telling that Nick is a doctor, and he started Wisdom Publications, and then he was a monk, started Wisdom, went on to America, started Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. So anyway, he was very close to Lama, and Lama saying, "I'm going to Laudo," which is 15,000 feet or 17,000 feet. Lama has an enlarged heart, So Nick's saying, "No, Lama, you're not going." Lama said, "I'm going." "No, you're not." "Yes, I'm going. And if you want to come, you can come, but otherwise I'm going. I have to go up there. I think it was the last time that he went. So Nick Rebush says, "Oh, all right, I better go because if something happens, I better be there as the doctor to look after Lama." So they fly to Lukla, and then they have to climb up. And there's a point where the path divides, and there's a longer, easier way, and there's a shorter but steeper way. So Lama said to Nick, "Okay, you go the shorter way, I'll go the longer way, and you can prepare the monastery, they'll all be waiting, you can prepare everything, and I'll be there, but I'll go the long way." "No, no, Lama, I must come with..." "No, no." But Lama was very insistent, "I'm going this way, you're going this way." So in the end, Nick went the short way. All the monks are out on the balcony, all looking for Lama Yeshe. So they're all watching, they see Nick coming. Where's Lama? "Oh, Lama's coming. He's coming up the longer way because it's easier. So get the room ready, get the tea made," like this. They're waiting and waiting and waiting. And in the end, Nick's completely freaked out because he imagines Lama dead on the pathway from this enlarged heart. And, Lama's died. And then he's thinking, what could have happened? What could have happened? One of the monks said, "Did you check Lama's room?" He said, "Well, no, he couldn't get past us because there's all these monks on the wall and there's only 2 ways up and they're all at the pathway." "Okay, I'll go and check the room." So he went to the room. There's Lama sitting in the room, laughing and laughing, giggling. "What took you so long, Nick?" Somehow he got up there without walking past all the monks. So there are many stories about Lama like that, having powers, but was very secretive about his practice. So Lama Zopa said in the afternoons, Lama used to have nap, but really he was doing completion stage practices, never told anybody, used to just say, "I'm having a nap." So really a secret practitioner, but with incredible powers, at least 8th level bodhisattva. So then, people ask me now, why in this live bongo drumming, more than David's beard? He used to have this little goatee thing and, tattoos, all this sort of thing. I think in this day and age, he really connected with young people. This is how young people look. They bongo drum, they have tattoos, they say whatever, like this. So one of the students from his school in America said to Lama, but didn't know he's Lama Osel, right? Everybody in the school, this posh school, knew him as Osel. So he said to Osel, "I'm going to Nepal." And Osel said, "Oh, really? Where are you going?" "Kopan Monastery, for a course." "Really? I know somebody there." "Do you?" "Yeah, I know somebody in the office. I'll put you in touch." So he puts this guy in touch with Annie Fran. So this guy writes to Annie Fran, "I know Osel. He mentioned you, blah, blah, blah. I'm coming to this course." So she said to me, "This is a friend of Osel. Look after him." So this young boy comes. He's about 17 years of age. Lama Osel's picture is on the altar, right? Of him at about 15, 16. So this young boy comes not knowing he's the Lama of the monastery. He arrives, he's got a nice room, and he says, "Wow, this is incredible. Knowing Osel is really good because I got a nice room. Everybody else is in dormitory, but he's got a single room." So he's sitting at the front, he's looking around, and he looked, and he's like, he said to me, "Who's that?" And I said, "Lama Osel." "But he's in school with me." "Yes, he's the reincarnation of Lama Yeshe." He said, "We never knew. He was in school, that school, I think 2 or 3 years. Never knew." So I think this is the perfect practitioner. Low key, not going around saying, "Look at me, this is what His Holiness is now saying." What's freaking people out about we're not going to have reincarnations anymore is that we're going to stop saying, "Oh, look, this person's from the last life, this continuity." That the powerful people, the strong people, will rise to the surface anyway. You don't need to go around declaring them.
Can you explain more about that? Because I only kind of heard that that had been said, but I
Well, you're not going to be found. In your obituary, you can cross that line out. When they find my body, the next me, you're not going to be found. So, the Rinpoche thing only existed in Tibet, didn't exist in India. So now His Holiness is saying, maybe this needs to be changed because it was from feudal Tibet that it was appropriate for the situation. But maybe now it doesn't work, and doesn't work in the West, isn't working in India very well. And so perhaps things should change, and we should go back to the way it used to be, the Nalanda tradition, which is that everybody's equal, and the ones who really study, they come to the top. The ones who really practice, they come to the top, and the ones who don't, okay. The problem is when you put the label Rinpoche and then they don't behave like a Rinpoche, it causes trouble. People lose faith. And you're trying to develop faith, and then people are looking at their teacher who's misbehaving with the label Rinpoche and thinking, well, why is he doing like that? Because until 8th level Bodhisattva, they have gross delusion. But then, how is it you can behave, but they can't? It brings into question a lot of things that we can't answer. So His Holiness is now questioning, do we need the reincarnation lineage? He's saying Buddha Shakyamuni never reincarnated. Many, many famous lamas from the early days never reincarnated. So why is it in the Tibetan tradition we need reincarnation? He's bringing this question up. He can't stop it, but he's bringing the question up, the debate.
But if he's not, when he passes on,
yes,
he won't be around to validate
right
the reincarnation.
Of whom?
Of who, whoever is reincarnating again, whilst Dalai Lama is not old enough to be able to validate.
Yeah, but there's always there's Karmapa, there's Ling Rinpoche, there's many, many lamas who do this. In the Nyingma tradition, the Kagyu tradition, there's many lamas who find these reincarnations. It's not that it's only His Holiness who does it. There's many, many lamas do it.
I thought they all went through
No. Many don't. But I think he's brought up a very valid point of, do we need this anymore? He's not saying it should stop. He's starting the debate. And that's what I was saying, that when you have a debate, you bring all different views to the table. And then he will discuss with everybody the different traditions, the different lamas. And if the lamas say, no, it must continue, it will continue. Even if he doesn't agree with it, it will continue because he believes in democracy. But if all the lamas say, you're right, let's stop it, then we'd have to look at how do you reorganize the monasteries, because the Rinpoche was the one who gave the teachings and brought the money in to the monastery to support all the monks in their house. So you'd have the Rinpoche, the Geshes, the monks, the house, which is part of Serajay, Seramay, Drepung Ganden, whatever. You have a system. If you're not going to have the Rinpoche, you're going to need the Geshes to take over and raise the money and bring in the money to take care of the house. That's not impossible, but it just means the responsibility shifts. There'll be a different system. Maybe this is a good thing, to have a feudal system within India. Maybe it doesn't work. And he'll be looking at, when we go back to Tibet, what system do we want in Tibet? Do we want to go back to the way it was? Or do we want a different system? There's no answer to it yet, but it's certainly freaking people out. One friend of mine wrote to me and she said, does this mean I'm not going to be reincarnated anymore? She thought he's banning reincarnation. Nobody will reincarnate from now on. We'll all go into sort of a jelly. So some people took it like that. He's going to stop reincarnation altogether. I said, well, of course we're going to still reincarnate, but I think he's sort of, without pointing at the other traditions, I think he's actually saying all Tibetan
those high-level practitioners reincarnate that Lama Osom,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah.
Wasn't a very important part of his getting to where he is now, the years spent in the monastic system to awaken the teachings from Rinpoche.
Yes, yes.
So if one's not recognised as a Rinpoche, how does that take place? And how does that play out for the future?
You're going to have a child saying, I want to go to the monastery, you know, and then you've got to have parents that say, okay, he or she should go to the monastery. I watched a video recently of His Holiness talking about a young child of Tibetan parents who came from Tibet with the child, came into India, and the child was very small and kept saying, this is not my place. Very small, I think 4 or 5. This is not my place in Dharamsala. And then kept going to different places with this child, and he kept saying, this is not my place. They got to the monastery, I think it was Drepung, and he got there and he said, this is my place. Remembered the monastery and felt at home. How many parents would do that? Imagine Western parents, you know, in Auckland or wherever, and the child saying, I want to go to Drepung. And they say, Dre what? Where's that? So within the Tibetan community, with their faith, okay, maybe it works. But would it work outside of the Tibetan community? I think it's highly doubtful. So then what would happen is the child would grow up without the Buddhist education, as we do, and then later would meet Buddhism because they want to, but then would have to meet it in some way. So you have to have strong karma for that. And you have to have a Dharma center where it's possible. So it brings into question a lot of things. And I think that's what His Holiness wants. Instead of us just judging and criticizing and saying, well, maybe there shouldn't be Rinpoches, he's throwing up, so if there are not Rinpoches, what's going to happen? Just like you're asking. That's when you start the debate. And maybe you come to the conclusion, even though some of the Rinpoches may go wrong, you're better off with the majority of them who are not going wrong. You see, I think too much money and too much freedom is given to many of these Rinpoches. I think that's the problem. It's not the Rinpoche system, it's the fact that they're given so much adulation, so much freedom, so much money from the previous disciples that then they can buy their mobile phones and they can buy the car, whatever. They can get whatever they want. So their minds go too much into the desire realm. I think they should be kept in a simpler system. And then when they're older, they're more able to control the mind when they've had the re-education.
So actually it's safer for them if they're not identified, because then they're just in a flat
With everybody.
system.
Yeah.
You know, you can't have those other interested parties skewing it different ways.
Yeah.
It's safer for them.
Yeah.
I've considered that with German Rinpoche.
I think the problem is the money. You know, in Tibet, they didn't have the money. They were living in very simple situations. But now within India, if you've got 10,000 disciples who've got money, they come and they want to give everything to this child because they said, this is my guru. My guru's back, you know? And so they lavish too much on the child. When I was with Lama Osel, Basili gave me the wallet to look after Lama Osel, the money. I think we had $200 in those days. It was 1988 and 89, somewhere around there. 89 probably. So we had about $200. Mostly I spent my own money. I think I got salary something like 600 rupees a month, which was about, I don't know, maybe $5. I paid for my own tickets. I paid for many things myself. Lama Osel was kept poor. Because actually at that time, Lama Zopa was poor. When I met Lama Zopa, he had no money. When Lama Osel went into the monastery, entered the monastery at the age of 6, Lama Zopa said to the abbot, now Lama's entering the monastery, I want to feed all the monks. So Roger sort of immediately bolt upright. He's the money, you know. Out came the calculator. He said, Rinpoche, how many people? How much each meal? Rinpoche, you need $1 million. This is a time when Rinpoche didn't even have a bank account, didn't have any money. Rinpoche said, okay, I'll get the $1 million. Like that. Within a week, he had the $1 million. So, before that time, the FPMT money didn't exist. It was a very simple organization. Kopam was very simple. Everything was very simple. And then from Lama going into the monastery, and Rinpoche starting to fundraise for the monastery, feeding all the monks, then the big fundraising started, you know. But I think this was very good for Lama Osel, that it kept him simple for a long, long time. But then he decided, you know, I don't want to be a monk, I don't want to be in the monastery. I think I can be of more benefit out. And that should be his decision. You should be able to do that, not be trapped within the system and forced into being whatever the organization wants you to be, you know. Well, we're late, people, aren't we? We should dedicate. And I didn't teach. This is disgusting. I didn't teach what I was supposed to teach. All these stories. This is your karma, isn't it? Well, I enjoyed myself immensely this afternoon. You know, I felt totally relaxed and I could tell some stories. But tomorrow we've got to knuckle down. So we're going to do Shantideva. But also I think I can give you some homework. This is good for you.